Hey friends, welcome to Soul Cafe. We're glad you're here. So it's the week before Thanksgiving. We're not going to meet Thanksgiving week, so we'll call this Thanksgiving week. Aaron,
Yeah,
what do you think?
yeah,
And
I think
you're
so.
leaving tomorrow anyway, right? So
True. Yeah. So for me, it's Thanksgiving week already.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, me too. So
Yeah.
you're headed to South Carolina?
We're headed to South Carolina, Folly Beach, South Carolina. Gonna go get a little sunshine and sand therapy. So right on the ocean. Can't wait.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
should be nice. You should have nice weather, I think.
We should.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've said it's supposed to be in the 70s, so I'm excited. You're gonna head out to the retreat center.
Yep, always into the
Yeah.
mountains. I think you got to be where it's as cold as possible. See, this is the difference. Cold mountains, that's me for Thanksgiving. I think if you can see some mountain vistas and you
Yeah.
can get some cold weather, that's good for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I agree.
Get you
Yeah.
ready for Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, I never used to have the beach or nice weather up until 9 years ago. That was when we started going and doing these trips with this family for Thanksgiving, and admittedly, I was like, "You know what? Actually, I don't mind having a little
Yeah,
break from the
I know.
cold,"
I know. I like the beach anytime,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah, we go down to our beach place. Sometimes at Christmas it'll get warm
right,
and we're like,
right.
this is
It's like
pretty nice.
far enough away from good weather that you're, like, happy about having decent weather. I mean, although this year's been a little strange because we just had 70-degree weather, what, last week? So,
Yeah, I feel like we're not going to
yeah,
get much more cold weather. I just
yeah. Today
I
was a
just
little breezy, but
I just feel like it's done. Now today was breezy and
yeah,
cold, but it's
about
one
35.
day and then
Yeah,
and then it's going to revert. So
yeah.
anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
coming.
So
Have you
we
done, Christmas decorations yet?
oh yeah, they're all
Have
as
you
you can
really?
see.
Oh,
Yeah,
actually, you're right. I didn't even notice that earlier.
no,
I
they're
can't
up.
believe. I think it's insane. I've never heard of people decorating so
No,
early.
we had to do it because we're doing a production for. It's a long story, but
Oh,
this
okay.
is we had to have everything up. So
Gotcha. Okay.
this is a mission that we had to be on.
Okay.
But we actually the last few years we've discovered if we get it up before we leave for Thanksgiving, you come
Yeah.
back and it's there. Oh man, that's
Nice.
really nice. You know how you dread it? Maybe you don't, but
No.
so
But yeah.
we go big and
Okay.
we usually entertain a lot. So this year's going to be really different. No big
Yeah.
staff party,
Great.
no 80 people coming over for that, and this year's just going to be different.
Yeah.
Christmas Eve's going to be different. I'm just it's going to be
Yeah.
weird, but
Yeah.
hey, the end is in sight. We got a vaccine, so or two.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're
Yeah.
out of this. So
Cool.
we just got to survive
Yeah.
the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about gratitude tonight,
Yeah.
and so we've been talking about gratitude for 9 weeks. So what have you learned from Philippians? Just out of curiosity, what's your takeaway?
Um.
Haven't talked to you
I
about this.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've had interesting conversations in IG, just talking through, the messaging around conflict and how do you resolve to sort of make sense of what's going on, but also be able to be content with what you have and what's around you, and be able to hold those things in tension. I think it's probably what I probably value the most is like not discounting the things that you're feeling, but then be able to counteract them or counterbalance them with the gratitude.
Yeah,
So keep things
yeah,
in
it's good.
perspective.
That's
Yeah.
good. I mean, I think the whole thing is gratitude is a discipline. We have
Yeah.
to exercise it. So that's what Lee's here to talk about in a little
Yeah.
while. And before that, we have Aaron here.
Yeah.
Oh, he's not here.
He's not here. Well, yeah, he's not here. He's
We should have
still
done a poll to see where people think he
thought he
is.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, granted, I do believe he did tell us last week where he was going to
Well,
speak, but then it would be a good quiz to see how many people pay attention when we're
right.
talking to them
Right.
each week.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
All right. So before we do that, we're going to take a poll. So
okay.
we haven't
All
done
right.
this in a while. So here we go. So this is our poll, and you can log in as you see
Yeah.
online, and that's the easiest way to do it. Or you can text to this one, but the Q&A you'll have to be logged in a few minutes. So, are you celebrating Thanksgiving with people outside your nuclear family? Yes,
Yeah.
no, still deciding. So, Aaron, you are right.
We are. I mean, yeah, because our nuclear family is, we don't really spend it with our nuclear. I don't know who our nuclear family would be, I guess. I guess it would just be me,
Well,
Cyril, and
that'd be your
yeah.
yeah, you, Cyril, and your kids,
And
right?
that's it. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I know it's hard, as an adult, I still consider my brothers to be, yeah, it's funny. I don't know why, because I know that's not the definition of it, but I still consider my brothers to be my nuclear family, I guess, as well. So, but no, we are spending it with friends that are family to us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, and it'll be interesting to see what happens afterwards as a result of that. Because I've talked to a whole lot of people that are just going to do their thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, there's also a lot of people that aren't. I was talking to someone
yeah, I've
today. Her
talked to those
mom
too.
apparently texted her and said, "We're going to do drive-by meal drop off."
Oh
So
well, that
she's
happened.
very sad.
Yeah, so up until a week ago, we were getting together with Debbie's family,
Yeah.
and then her sister and brother-in-law live in Nashville, which is a real hot spot right now.
Uh-huh.
And her mother called this week and said, "Hey, we've had some second thoughts, and I think that's wise. Obviously,
Yeah.
I think that's smart. But anyway, so that ended after I'd bought all the food. But
You're still gonna have a decent crowd. I mean, your
I'll
girls
have
and
my kids,
even others.
and hey, we need food for the
Yeah.
upcoming couple of months, so
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll eat it. It's
I feel
not a
bad for the
problem.
people who are again, this person I was talking to today, like they're single and their mom was like, "Yep, we're not doing it." And I was like, "Oh, it's got to be a
Yeah,
little hard when you're truly on your own and the family decides that they're not going to get together, as opposed to maybe even being a couple or being a
right.
small nuclear family that still can celebrate together." I think it's a tough time of year for a lot of people. So I'm honestly a little bit worried about too many people canceling on family. I think it's
Agreed. That's really different.
Mhm.
But I bought 4 turkeys. 4.
It's good. Goodness gracious.
Well, here's the thing. Once you fry one,
Yeah.
you may as well keep going.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they're like 12, 13 pounds a piece. They're small. So anyway, I've got 4 turkeys. You want some turkey?
I love turkey. I'll take
I do too. All right, let's get Aaron in and see what he'll sing for us from where people will guess he is. Maybe he'll tell us. What do you
that.
think
See.
if he comes in?
Is he coming in?
I promoted him. I don't know. We may have to
His
talk
internet
longer.
is a little bit, I don't know if he's got that antenna on his truck all the way up. Maybe the Roadrunner got him.
I think he logged out. He's going to log back in.
All right.
Okay, so Aaron, how many turkeys do you have?
We didn't actually buy any yet. We'll do all the shopping down there, I think. I'd
Oh,
imagine. I mean, we'll probably do two. Usually just because I'm very particular about my particular type of turkey. We do butter and bacon. Uh, and then Ryan, our friend, is a big chef, so he likes to sometimes do a very like shishi, different flavorful turkey. So sometimes we do, or he'll do a turkey breast or something, just so we get like a very interesting flavor, and then like a traditional butter and bacon turkey.
so butter and bacon, you mean you wrap it in bacon and fill
No,
it with
I
butter?
puree the bacon with butter and parsley and make it into a paste, and then it goes under the skin,
Yeah,
and then you drape bacon over it.
that sounds pretty good.
It's delicious.
And then you
Am
put
I
it in
on
the,
now?
yeah, you're
You're
on.
on now.
You put it in the oven. What
Nice.
happened to you? Where'd you
I don't
go?
know. You switched me and then the app crashed.
Oh,
It
that
just crashed.
happens. All right.
So
Well, what are you
yeah,
going to
that's
sing?
fine.
And where are you? Just tell people. I mean, why should they
All right,
guess?
so we're in Camp Verde, Arizona. So we've got some mountains in the distance. There's Mandy. Um,
Man,
but
that is seriously flat.
it
A lot.
looks like it, but it's much less flat than maybe what it looks like on the camera. But it's we're kind of in like, I don't know. We're in the mountains, but we're way up high right now. We're about 6,000 feet elevation, I think,
Oh,
in
yeah?
this area. So we're kind of like on top of a big mountain, like a plateau, but we're really close to Sedona and some amazing sort of national parks and national monuments and stuff, Native American things, and so it's been a lot of fun. We just saw the Grand Canyon on Sunday, which was incredible.
It's amazing. It is amazing. So you say you're going to be home on Monday.
That's our plan.
That's
Our
a
plan
long.
is to leave super early on Saturday morning and just hoof it 3 days with about 12 hours a day.
I think we should have taken a poll. Who would wager what time you're actually? I think Tuesday.
Yeah, well,
I don't
that's
think
entirely
you
possible.
make it.
Yeah.
I am skeptical the kids will make it, but we're gonna try it. And we'll
I
see
mean,
what
but don't
happens.
they have like basically like a living room and stuff they can run around? I mean, are they able to like move around and no?
No, so
Okay, how does that
we're
work?
all mashed inside the truck.
Oh,
For the entire 12
Yeah, no,
hours.
they're. It's not a motorhome. They're pulling
Yeah,
that.
a travel trailer. The crash videos of those things are terrifying.
Oh,
They
are you
basically just-
legally allowed to have people back there?
No, and it's not a good.
Oh.
Well, in some states you are, like Tennessee, you are, of course, and probably Texas too.
This is where my risk tolerance. See, this is where I'd be like, kids, get in the back. I don't know. We're gonna be fine. Run around back there.
So back on your door right there, is that a Target bag you're using for a trash bag, or what is that?
Yes, that's what that is.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I thought so.
Little redneck ingenuity there.
Yeah, so my brother Lee's going to be on in a little while, and we grew up camping. I mean, we camped. That's
Yeah.
all we did. That was what we did.
Yeah.
And I love camping. I think it's great family bonding. I think it's fun. You get to be outside. I mean, I think it's awesome. But
Yeah.
my wife,
Not so much.
no, not happening. She's not going to.
What about the girls? Were
Yeah,
they
I was gonna
campers?
say, the girls like it.
They say they do. I mean, I think so. Marley and Andrew have been camping some. They do some tent camping, which is totally different than what you're doing right there, frankly.
Right.
But yeah, I think they liked it. But Debbie just didn't grow up doing it, and I think that's a Did you grow up camping?
I grew up not camping a lot. I grew up though on sailboats, which is kind of like camping on the water.
Yeah, on the camping on the water. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. All right, what are you gonna sing?
Well, I was in the mood for some Alan Jackson, so I'm gonna play some old Alan Jackson. It's called "Here in the Real World." Cowboys don't cry, heroes don't die. Good always win, again and again. Love is a sweet dream that always comes true. Oh, if life were like the movie, never be blue. Here in the real world, it's not easy at all. 'Cause when hearts get broken, dares start to fall. Darling, it's sad but true. But the one thing I've learned from you is how the boy don't always get the girl here in the real world. I gave you my love, but that wasn't enough to hold your heart. Times got tough. Tonight on that silver screen, it'll end like it should. Two lovers will make it through, like I hoped we would. Here in the real world, it's not that easy at all. 'Cause when hearts get broken, it's real tears that fall. And darling, it's sad but true. But the one thing I've learned from you, how the boy don't always get the girl here in the real world. No, the boy don't always get the girl here in the real world.
Man, that fits out there with the wind blowing on your mic and
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
just doing one tonight?
That's all I got. Sorry.
All right, before you, so I'm going to tell you guys the results of the poll, Aaron. I got to
Okay,
tell you this before. So people have been responding like crazy, and
need to
all
know.
of them say no, they are not celebrating with people outside their nuclear family. So, Aaron,
Yep.
you are the exception to the rule in
Yep.
this
Well,
area. Well,
see it.
Yeah, we're not
Yeah.
either. We're not either. We're gonna be
no, we're not
on our
either.
own on Thursday, but probably we'll probably be doing some FaceTime / Zoom Thanksgiving of some sort.
Yeah, we'll probably do that too with Debbie's family. So here's my brother Lee. So we're going to talk about camping for a minute.
Okay. Let's talk
Did you
about
camp growing up, Aaron?
No, not really.
Okay, well,
I mean,
we
not that
really
I don't like it, but I
we
do.
did. So Lee, what are your favorite camping memories from our childhood? This
Did
is
you-
like off the cuff because I didn't tell him this in advance.
What did you ask? I was muted there for a second.
Your favorite camping memories from our childhood?
Oh gosh, running a wild without having to bathe, doing whatever we wanted, running around in the dirt. I mean, we were dirty, nasty little creatures. I think for a month while we were at the beach, all sandy.
Well, and if you did bathe, it didn't matter because by the time you got home from the bathhouse, yeah, you were wet.
no, yeah,
You were sweaty and all that.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So our mom, she made these sheets made out of terry cloth because you go to bed sandy because we used to camp at the beach every summer. We camped a lot of places, but the beach I remember the most. And then the sand would fall down in the terry cloth, and you wouldn't notice it. So
that's
there
the
you go.
theory.
That's clever.
Yeah.
That's clever.
Well, I
Unless
think
it just kind of like absorbs.
it kind
all
of
the-
worked.
Yeah, it holds the salt, so then you've got a crusty terry cloth thing. That's
So I
just-
have good and bad memories. I remember. I mean, it was great family time because you were together. What else did you do? But man, I remember being hot, and I remember being cold. Just depending on the trip.
not temperate. I don't remember a time when
No,
it was like
There's
perfect.
not too many times you lie there and go, "This is just ideal."
Heavenly.
Yeah. But we camped a lot and everywhere, all across the country, like you guys are now. Except that thing looks a little nicer, Lee, than what we
I
had.
saw it.
Show us
Yeah.
that vehicle right there, because so Lee and I had a Cox pop up.
Mhm.
That
Yep.
that's not what we camped in.
That's not the same thing.
No, that's like
this
our
is-
little brother. One time we were walking through this campground and he saw this big motorhome and he said, "When I get big, I'm going to get me a big motorhome with 2 air conditioners on top, sleep under pounds of covers." Because we were hot. We were just hot in the
So
summer.
you guys didn't tent camp. You camped with a camper thing?
Well,
Well,
it was
that's a modified tent because on the top it was a tent, and then when you got old enough, you got kicked out to the tent. So
you got so Lee and I then were out in the tent and everybody else, but it's like a shell with a tent on top. That's what we
Yep.
that's what we pulled all
we
over
slept
the
on the
country.
shelf hanging over.
Gotcha.
Hopefully you prayed that the bars held you up because they had to be positioned just right. Yeah.
We were pretty light. I mean, it was fun though. I mean, I wouldn't trade it. It was
No.
great.
No.
It was great.
When I was growing up, we did a lot of sailing, and every summer we would spend weeks out on the water. And so I am very familiar with just sitting in the heat, nowhere to go. You're stuck on a boat. There's no place to go. There's no breeze. It's 85 degrees at night or 80 degrees at night and humid. It's just
So Aaron, you know how they design the beds in a ship or any kind of boat to not fit you? It just doesn't
yes,
quite
of
angle.
course.
Yeah, that was us.
Well, that's
Okay.
so Aaron's like you, Lee. He's tall, and so I'm sure that was always true for him.
Yeah. The
So,
beds were sort
yeah.
of like a I don't know, like a parallelogram shape.
Yep.
So they were really hard to sleep in. I kind of felt like I was a parallelogram when I would get up in the morning.
All right, man. Well, have fun in Arizona, and we'll see you when you get back.
Good
We
to see
miss you.
y'all.
Have fun, man.
See ya.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, so Lee, since we had you on, it's been a while. I think you were here in March, maybe.
Right after
at the
shutdown.
beginning of it.
Yeah, the second week in March, and
Yeah.
we
Thought this would be
actually-
over.
We've had did you really?
No.
'Cause- no. I mean, I thought we'd be in a while, but this is a little longer than I
Mhm.
expected, but not much. And we had a lot of requests after that to have you back. And
Mhm.
so here you are back. And I think we have a good topic for you to talk about, because a lot of your work has been around gratitude in other words. But we've been talking for 9 weeks in our church about gratitude and living a life of gratitude. So I thought we might sort of launch out from there. But before we do, what have you learned from COVID? And people are still asking, for advice about how to make it through the next couple of months. I think are going to be pretty tough. So what's your latest with the people you're talking to?
Yeah, it's interesting how this really has brought out both sides of humanity, right? There are people rising to the occasion, and other people just in a mode of it's about right now. I can't think the long term, and I think the fatigue is the piece that is interesting. People either are no longer as clear about the threat, or they're confused about the threat, or I think the bigger thing is you just kind of, it becomes the background. The fear in the beginning has everybody in reaction mode. And then when it becomes every single day, we tend to lose our edge on anything. I've always said fear is not a great motivator. Short term, it's really good. It's just not a long term motivator because it exhausts us. And
Same
after a
thing I
while,
say
yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Yep.
So after a while, it's just the same noise again the next day, and we tune it out. I mean, that's, what I notice about everything in the news right now is nothing makes a dent because it's every day. So then we're not reacting in ways that are as helpful, which is, it's interesting. Your survey, we're in the same category. No, we're not going to be, we were planning on it, but we're not going to be with family, which tells me, at least from your survey, that people are listening to what experts are saying for the most part, and trying to figure out, Aaron, sorry, but trying to figure out what to do and
I
how
have
to
different fear.
assess. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I've always talked to, and we watch people, and you go, "Wow, I wouldn't do that." But what you recognize is that we all have a different level of where and what is safe, and how we assess that, which is also an interesting thing that this has made kind of a live lab. How do we, if you think what you're doing is not safe, you would change. And so, we all have a justification for what our risk factor is, and how we assess that. It's just been very interesting to watch.
Yeah, it was actually a study of that in our gathering with Debbie's family. So we are the most. I guess we live in a place where people pay the most attention to that kind of assessment. And then Debbie's parents live in South Carolina. They haven't been really particularly worried, although they've been careful. And then her sister and brother-in-law live in Nashville and have been not really worried at all. And so it was sort of a progressive. We were worried from the beginning, like what happens if, especially her parents, what happens if they get this, and
Yeah.
and we all have to deal with this,
Yeah.
and you don't know who's carrying, this. And then they weren't worried, and Debbie's sister wasn't worried, and then her sister started to say, well, maybe, I don't know. And then her mother finally this week said, I'm not sure this is a good idea. So it was sort of a progressive movement of who's most sensitive to the information that's out there.
Mhm.
And we wound up in the same place, which is just going to be our nuclear family. But I do think that if fear is the baseline, the higher it gets, we form a different baseline, and we think that's normative. And I don't think that what people are living with right now is normal. I think the level of concern and fear people have is higher than normal, so their baseline is strange, and that causes all sorts of weird reactions. So, with the people you're dealing with, how are they reacting to this?
So there, again, two categories: those who have kind of adapted their life to something that feels like normal, and so they've just gotten wrapped in there. And then there's the group that just is at the point of fatigue. They're not necessarily given up, but they are exhausted by it. So our response to the exhaustion is either to just give up, or to fall into some level of despair, and give up on trying to stop things, or falling into despair about how things are. And so, neither one are particularly adaptive, but it's a tough time, because every time you get to that place where you go, okay, I think I've got this down, something else comes up, like Thanksgiving. What do you do about Thanksgiving? And then you start thinking, as y'all are facing, what do you do about Christmas celebrations? And we weren't thinking about that in March and April and May. And suddenly, you probably were, Jim, but I
No,
wasn't.
I wasn't. I was thinking about Easter.
True.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I started this summer thinking Christmas is going to be really different,
Yeah.
but it's going to be really different.
It's going to be really, really different.
Yeah.
And you start going, well, what does that mean? And I think there's an opportunity for new traditions, maybe even just the tradition for 2020, hopefully. But I do think that that's a shift that people have to make. You have to get to that place where you have to let go of what can't be
Hmm.
to figure out what could be. And I think that, which is really part of that gratitude thing, figuring out what really is the possibility there.
Have you seen, based on like what, because I think fear is and Jim, you talked about it a lot in your sermon series. Fear is sort of like the basic emotion, but having fear doesn't mean you have fear of the same things. And so have you seen a difference in the way people are responding based on which thing they're fearful of, right? Because not everyone's terrified of the disease, right? Some people are terrified of their stability or their loneliness, or there's plenty of other things that are
Or control
or control, or like
from an
they're
outside force.
causing fear that aren't necessarily, it's not a uniform type of fear, right? So fear might be the uniform emotion, but it's probably not always based in the same thing for everybody. And have you seen any difference in the way people are responding based on what their fear is based on?
Well, so yes, you're correct about that. But there are only a few ways that we tend to respond automatically to fear.
Yeah.
So fight, flight, freeze,
Right.
flail. That's kind of the four that people do, and that seems to be what people are doing.
Yeah.
And so whatever it is may elicit. So if they're thinking that there's something to fight against, I mean, that's different than
Right.
if you're going, okay, there's this invisible virus around me, and so I'm going to flee or I'm going
Right.
to freeze, right? And so those responses, though, are pretty consistent in our bodily fear response, our automatic fear response. And there is a difference between the kind of the chronic and the crisis.
Right.
March was a crisis. At this point, we're in chronic phase. And so as it stretches on, how we respond to fear also changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before, excuse me, before we move forward, let me share the screen here so people can ask questions if they want to. So if you'd like to, you can ask a question. This is how you do it. And you can do it with poll everywhere. Nobody's asked one yet. And so what would you like to ask of Lee? So let people register that for a minute. And while we're doing that, Lee, so, I've been doing this whole series on gratitude, and my basic premise is that fear is a core response, and you're going to have fear. It's a given. It's just a part of life, and that we have certain reactions to it, if you will, and those reactions include anger. And I think that's where some people are, or we can have a number of reactions, but they probably show up somewhere in anger. And then that gratitude is a coping mechanism. It's a discipline that we learn. So I've read and listened to a lot you've done about gratitude, and I think it's been core to how I have learned to respond to fear. So what would you say about being grateful in a moment like this? I've called this, by the way, this sermon series is called When Gratitude Grates, because people don't want to be grateful right
That's
now.
right.
It's not their initial response. They don't
Yeah.
even, they almost resist it. They almost say, don't ask me to be grateful right
Right.
now. And it's most important right now. So could you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I was talking with a client the other day, and he said, before you tell me to do my gratitude exercise, don't tell me to do that. Don't make me do that. I'm like, make you? You have an opportunity to do that, because we know what happens when you do that. It feels like a tough thing to go against when you're fearful, which I really think is why it's a discipline. I mean, it's not our automatic response because our brain is wired for that survival mode. And we've got to survive in order to get to the place where we can be grateful. So it sets the baseline, keeps you safe, but it also keeps you frozen. And so part of the difficulty is when we hunker down in that fear response, then anything else feels like it's going to put us at risk. And so somehow making that shift to gratitude can feel risky. how dare I be able to be grateful in the midst of all of this? And so I think that's kind of the challenge in this moment. What I think is important is the two mindsets that accompany fear and gratitude, which is scarcity and abundance. And that the scarcity place makes it hard to go, okay, what do I even have to be grateful for? I mean, this year I can't be with family. Maybe I've lost my job, maybe I've lost income. All these things feel very threatening, and it gets us stuck in the scarcity spot, which the balance point that we can move to is to go, okay, but here I am, and here are the opportunities. And how can I balance those two things? It doesn't necessarily break the hold of fear, but it sure starts to pull us a little bit away just by beginning to activate some of the discipline of gratitude.
Hmm. And how do you practice this discipline? So I've asked people to keep a journal, to find themselves grateful even of pain. And I mean, we have to, how we embrace pain, I think, is the core question of our
Yeah, yeah.
whole lives. Eventually, if I've said to people, if you'll name three things a day, you can't repeat them. You have to do it through this whole exercise. You eventually get to things that are hard to be grateful for. But how do you suggest that people practice the discipline of gratitude?
Yeah. So research is pretty clear that it doesn't take a lot to get that going. I know it's the cliche of the gratitude journal, but writing down three things that you're grateful for does begin the process. My challenge for people is to write down three different things every day,
Yeah,
because some people just go, my kids, my wife, or my spouse,
that's
and
exactly what I
my
said.
job.
You cannot repeat. It has
No,
to be different every day.
because what you're trying to do is change a habit of thought where you have to, if you're doing three, you do that for a month, you now have had to come up with 90. You have to start looking. You have to
They
start
get
breaking it
harder.
down.
They get
Yeah.
really harder. I've been doing it for 3 months. It's really harder.
It is, but it begins to shape how you view the world. And
Hmm.
so you begin to look for that. My wife, Kathy, is a therapist, and she's been talking to her clients about having gratitude prompts. And her example is a yellow car. And I can't remember exactly how that started, but when you see a yellow car, to think about something you're grateful for. And so you're driving along, oh, there's a yellow car. I have to think about something I'm grateful for. And so those prompts, and it doesn't have to be a yellow car. You can choose something. Just don't choose like a silver or white car because you're not going to be able to drive. But there's something that can be your prompt that you go, oh, that. I know people who do that with their phone. When their phone rings, before they answer their phone, they think of something they're grateful for. Hopefully they're not, like on helpline where it's constant, but some trigger that's going to be a few times in the day, and you have to just take a moment to go, oh, that's that. It prompts you to get there. Sometimes the gratitude journal is something that people dash off in the morning. So I created the Thrive Journal. It's a twice a day process that I have that starts the morning off doing some framing of how you want the day to be, who you want to be that day, and what you're grateful for. And at the end of the day, you go back and review it. And my suggestion is that people look at what they said they were grateful for at the beginning of the day and just sit there and meditate on it a little bit. Just take that in. Most people are surprised about how much that physiologically changes. When we're in fear response, we breathe differently. Our blood pressure is different. Everything is different in our physiology. When we're practicing, so that's kind of an in breath. Practicing gratitude is much more of a out breath process. And so that balances out at the end of the day what's been going on as they've been dealing with the rest of the world the rest of the day.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think it's one of the things that I and we talked about this on our IG that we that a lot of people are in the practice, for instance, in a religious space of praying, but it's the practice of praising isn't as always pronounced, and so you might have grown up knowing, oh, I say my prayers, but you don't necessarily you maybe didn't grow up knowing, well, in that prayer time I should also be lifting my praises. And so, like, when we're talking, when we go around in a circle, it's praise and prayers, prayer requests, because it's a practice of saying, like, there are things I might be praying for, but I want to remember that I also need to be giving praise. And like for our kids at dinner every night, we have highs and lows. So there's like, I'm wondering if there's anything that you use as a tool, because for me it's helpful to be able to go, okay, well, if my low is this, it forces me to think of like, but then also what was my high, and it helps me to balance that I can recognize both. Or it's like, if I'm grateful for these things, what do I need to be forgiven for today? And like this ability to sort of hold both of them in tension, has, at least for me personally in my life and for my children, and when we were talking about it on Sunday, even in IG, being able to hold that balance. It's like people don't, sometimes they're afraid to speak of the good or to praise or to, maybe that's not humility or anything. And so being able to hold them in tension can loosen people up to go, it's okay if that's your prayer, but let's make sure we're also mentioning our praise. What are we grateful for to that point?
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever talked to anyone about being able to see both sides of the coin, so that people can release the fact that they do have things they want to pray for, but you
Yeah.
still have to get to your praise.
Well, and I think that gratitude is humility,
Yeah.
to be able to go, this isn't, I haven't necessarily done all that's here, right? I'm
Right.
not, it's not all me, is a point of humility. And sometimes to be able to say it's not at all me,
Right.
I'm just the benefit of this. So that shifts us immediately to a different level of thought. Yeah, one of the things that is sometimes hard is I remember having had conversations with people about, asking them to read something that's difficult, like Man's Search for Meaning, something that is about people who have gone through something tougher, and they have an immediate pushback on that. But I still think it's important for us to be able to be mindful that even in our toughest, darkest places, um, you know, we are reminded that God's always with us. That's a point of gratitude if at base level. And then we can kind of build from there of what else do I have. One of my foundational experiences was being a chaplain while I was in seminary and a little bit after that. And I covered the oncology floor. So I saw people on a regular basis, and it never ceased to amaze me about the people who were telling me how, what gratitude they had for having been sick. And they always said, I would never ask for it, but boy, it changed my life. The gratitude I have for what I've experienced. And, and actually, it ended up being pretty clearly two camps: those who cursed their disease and never could see beyond that anything was possible, anything good was possible, and those who could see that, see what was good, see what was possible, even in the face of that. And I'm not sure exactly what always makes that difference between the two, but I've always tried to go, okay, how can I move towards that side? That whatever's going on, can I see some piece of how it's, even if it's a struggle? And so, Jim, you talked about dealing with pain. In the midst of a struggle, can I see the place where I have some possibility of growth?
Yeah, no, I've been saying gratitude attaches us to something beyond ourselves, something eternal, and then we come back and we reclaim the possibility of the moment. So these people, as they reclaim the possibility of the moment, if they, what did they say? It's one thing to say, "I'm grateful for this hard thing." What were they grateful for? How did it
Yeah.
affect their lives?
Oh, for most, it was that it woke them up. I had somebody who said it's 6 months. She had terminal cancer, and she said, and I was sitting there going, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and trying to be with her in her pain. And she said, "Oh, no, I was not living for 41 years. For 6 months, I've been fully alive. I've been telling people how important they are. I've been alive. And so I'll take those 6 months that I never would have had I not been sick." And that was a very common theme, that they had made a shift somehow. Many had changed things that were really should have been changed long before, things that they should not have been tolerating. Many had revived lost relationships, had made apologies where they maybe had not before, had made new connections, had just really, lived. And so that was their gratitude, that in that moment they had found a way to really be alive.
So you do wish, though, that we could somehow, in our moments of ease, capture that. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what I find to be hard. I think there's a reason why Paul says suffering produces endurance and the like, and we finally get to faith. And but how can we get to that without getting to that moment? And even now, what happens if we deny or resist the pain of this moment, which is what I find a lot of people's natural instinct is, instead of embracing and letting us teach us what is important about life.
Yeah. So from my experience, it took an illness to kind of wake me up. It wasn't a terminal cancer diagnosis, but it could have been pretty bad, and it woke me up. And from there on, I was saying that I'm in bonus time. I didn't think I would, have the time. So it really did take something to wake me up. And the question is how big the crisis has to be, though. I think that life keeps, kind of throwing us opportunities to go, oh, wait a minute, I've got to kind of take that in and make some shifts here. And so it doesn't have to be life threatening. I think that sometimes we try to kind of push away the tough moments when the tough moments could be saying, hey, something's got to change here. Let's see where life really could go for you.
So before I miss it, I've got a question that came up on the poll. Somebody asked, I feel like I'm doing okay, but I'm not sleeping well. What does that mean? What should I do?
Yes. So if it's a change, I mean, some people have a difficulty sleeping, have been before COVID. So I look for the changes. If there's a change that's alerting you to the anxiety that's kind of an undercurrent, and lots of people are having sleep disturbances now. And so what do? Is start trying to figure out if there's some habits you can change. You can't just turn off the anxiety piece, but there are some ways of toning that down. And you can do relaxation techniques, lying in bed, changing your breathing style, making sure that you're creating an environment. I mean, we can go in depth in those if you want to, but it depends on how in depth we want to be with that. My thing is devices and news are out the door about 8 o'clock at night. I'm not going to look at the news. I'm not going to go scrolling through, as they talked about doom scrolling these days. Where's the next bad message? And that does keep us activated. I also am a big believer in working on our breathing. It's one part of our system that we get to control. And so working on belly breathing, I've had lots of people have success just lying in bed, one hand on their belly button, one hand on their chest, just making sure that the one that moves is on their belly button and just counting their breaths.
So would you say though that like this person is saying what I think a lot of people need to see? This is probably an indicator that more is going on than you think there is. So you need to dig deeper in your waking hours too, and figure out how am I responding to the pain and the fear of this moment. I've said gratitude is an antidote. I don't think people believe me, honestly. I think they think it's too simple, but it is to somehow figure out things are not as bad as I think they are. Maybe they are. I mean, maybe they're really that bad, but
there are other parts of
moments. Life. Yeah, there are parts of life that are so enriching.
So here's the interesting thing. Gratitude is, I mean, we talk about low hanging fruit here on how do I do? Gratitude is writing 3 things down in the morning, right? Thinking about 3 things. That's the base level. You could do a lot more, but that's a base level.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why people underestimate it. Breathing is underestimated. And so many times I'll have a conversation with people repeatedly. Are you doing gratitude? Are you doing the journal stuff? Are you doing the breathing exercises? I need something more powerful. Okay, but do that first, right? Let's go ahead and deal with some of the low-hanging stuff. And so unfortunately, there are lots of times when the simple things are too simple. These two have so much research behind them. I mean, there's not much that has shown to be as effective as gratitude in breaking the hold of fear on people. And so I would just do a challenge. If you don't believe it, be a skeptic and try it for 30 days.
Yeah. And by the way, it's ancient too. I mean, it's totally biblical. This is all over the New Testament. I just think we miss the most obvious stuff.
Just curious if you were, well, just to ask it, because you're, one of the things that I think culture has done a lot of talking about is resilience, right? So a lot of people, I think one of the unusual things about this particular time that we're in, and Lee, you might have seen it, like if you're working with someone who maybe isn't terminal, but they've had chronic cancer for some time, when people don't feel like they might be able to, in the moment, and even for a sustained period of time, get into the right place. But right now, for such a huge collection of people, there doesn't feel like there's people can't quite get to the point of resilience because there's not a point yet where things have bounced back or gotten to a new normal or anything that people are supposed to recognize. How would you help people to sustain that level, right? Because it's different to say you've been through this really horrific thing, you're on the other side of it, we need to help you get to a sustainable level of this, versus what human nature is when there's no when people feel like there isn't an end in sight, again, maybe comparable to someone who doesn't know whether their cancer is going to be cured, and therefore it's a different outlook they might have than someone who's given 6 months to live and able to power through that pivot of their thinking. I'm just curious.
Yes. So resilience is actually not waiting for the normal to return.
Right.
It's dealing with what's going on, and so it's not a matter of waiting for when does everything get back to normal.
Right.
We're at a change that there's so many things that are not going back to what they were on March 10th or February 10th. That's not happening. For many different ways, that's not happening. And so if we're waiting for back to normal, there's a time to move beyond that and say, okay, how do I adapt to what is? Because resilience is really dealing with what's coming at you and getting to a better place.
Right.
Not because it's gotten back to normal. So the people that amazed me on that oncology floor were the ones who were terminal. They knew that there was the end, and it could be a long time. I mean, I was there for several years as staff, so I got to know them. It went on and on. And so they weren't waiting for a miracle cure. They weren't waiting for the news to change. The wake up was because they saw what was going on, and they were confronting it as best they could, given the circumstances at hand.
There's a certain strange relativism too. We've been praying with a young man in our church every Monday night, a group of guys and I, who has had a really difficult cancer. And what is good news for him is set at a certain baseline, and it's kind of intriguing to me. I've noticed this because, what would sound horrible to somebody in a different situation sounds just amazing to him. And so I think part of it has to do with sort of setting our baseline at a different place, understanding how fragile we really are, what mortality really is, how short life really is. We have a limited time. When you're well, to still see that my days are numbered, to still see that eternity is more than what's right now. I wonder what you say about dealing with those people like that who the littlest piece of good news, the smallest piece of good news, and you would just go, wow, that really lit your world, and it wouldn't light yours where you are now. What do you do with your baseline?
Yeah. So, and what is the baseline? I mean, that's the question. I remember one moment of being with a patient who the doctor had said, "You've got maybe 6 months," and I'm sitting there again, trying to connect, and the person said, "You know what? You don't know." I know my date. You don't know your date. What if it's on the way home that night? And I'm sitting there going, well, I'm going to drive a little carefully on my way home.
But they
tonight.
also might have thought 6 months was awesome. I deal with people who, they think it could be a month, and they hear 6, and they're like, "That's awesome," right?
Yeah. So, part of it is the fact that we're able to kind of push off that idea. We don't think about our own mortality very often. When we do, we tend to push that away. I've done retreats with people where I originally would ask them to write their obituary. What would people write about you? And it was always interesting what date they would put and how they would die. They didn't want to somehow create the possibility, and we're just so uncomfortable with that. And so a lot of the people would in the hospital would have gotten comfortable with that. They're like, okay, I've got this much. And I think it's not that we're going to get comfortable with that as much as this has brought mortality center stage for us as, as people. And so that very fact, I think, is a place of us to have expanded our awareness that we don't think about that very often. And yet that is an undeniable part of our existence.
Yeah. Well, and it strikes me that in the sermon series I've been preaching, I've said Paul has credibility because he's in chains and he thinks that he may be condemned to death. So he thinks his days could be numbered, but maybe that is why he was able to discover such truth about gratitude,
Mhm.
because he thought his days might be numbered. So how do you get to the? I mean, I think people ask, how do I get to the point of saying, "For me to live is Christ, to die is gain"? Maybe it's hard to do when when you have in your mind that there's a lot of life left.
Sure. Well, and you said that maybe Paul realized his days may be numbered. His days were numbered.
Well, of course,
That's
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's
Well,
how do we
he
live into
lived
that?
two more years, so
Yeah.
yes, they were, yeah.
How do we live into that reality? And so part of what I use in my own kind of uh, aiming is what's the impact I want to leave? How do I want to make this world better? And if that's my focus, that's what I'm doing today. How am I trying to leave the place a little bit better today? Um, that changes my day. It's not, "Oh, well, maybe I have 20 years to do it. I may have today to do that. What do I do to make that worthwhile? And to bring it back, how can I be grateful for that day I had?"
Hmm. So why is anger our natural response? I mean, I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you expound on this. What I'm finding is that people their core response is anger. They're angry at the government. They're angry at whatever I don't know. They choose the thing they're angry at, but they're angry, and it is to me incredibly unfruitful. I think it is a waste of the moment. But it is what a lot of people are doing right now in our culture, and it's angry at what we have no control over this thing. I mean, thankfully we do have some technology
That's your
to deal
point.
with it. Yeah,
The control is the point.
but it's so unfruitful. How do we get away from that? How can we escape it?
Yeah.
And maybe not escape it, but recognize it and move to a different place.
So I believe that anger is always a secondary emotion, and it's a secondary emotion to hurt, fear, and threat.
Yeah,
Those three things.
yeah, totally
So,
agree.
so part of what I try to do when I'm watching the anger is go, okay, what's their hurt? What's their fear? What's their threat? What's motivating that? Partly because that creates empathy. I can connect with somebody over what they're scared about, what they're hurt about,
Hmm.
what they feel threatened by. That's a connecting piece. Anger is repelling. And when we're on the next level of what's the primary, that's attractive. I mean, if somebody says, "Man, I'm really scared," oh, tell me about it. If they come across as angry, I put up my defense too.
Yeah.
And so anger is a repelling, and again, back to we're built for survival. That really works really well. If something is truly threatening me, for me to have an angry response to repel it makes sense. And
Hmm.
so for us just to even be able to, when I work with people in a marriage and they're talking about their angry spouse, my response is, "You mean your hurt, scared spouse," just as a way of turning that. And that does change how we can relate. And it also helps for the person who is angry to be able to go, "Okay, wait, what's this response about? What is my fear? What is my hurt? What is my threat?" We justify our anger rather than asking the questions that we don't really want to think about our
Hmm.
vulnerability.
Hmm.
We're having to say, "What's my soft underbelly?" rather than, "What are my hard scales that I'd rather show the world?"
Yeah,
There's
no,
a vulnerability there.
I agree. I've been saying, actually, Debbie and I were talking about this today. Anger allows us to pretend that the enemy is always external. And to externalize it, however, does not resolve what is inside of us. That's the problem with it. It keeps it out here and doesn't let me deal with it in here. Gratitude, to me, draws me in here. It pulls me to an internal state, and it's not the only discipline, but I think it is a powerful discipline to sort of understand that.
I think so many disciplines, though, are wrapped around gratitude.
Yeah, I
Th-
totally agree.
Yeah, if somebody says, "Well, I fast," okay, why are you fasting? Partly to remind yourself of
Yeah.
all that you have, which is gratitude. So many of the ways that we have talked about traditional disciplines in Christian life are bound into gratitude and appreciation.
Hmm. It's good. All right, Aaron, push it.
No, I'm just listening. Last night we had a small group Bible study, and we were studying Lamentations 3, And it was a really interesting discussion because everyone was in different stages, if you will, of like having, different things have also just in life happened throughout this pandemic for people. So there are external things that are also happening that aren't the pandemic, right? That, have nothing to do with the pandemic
Mhm.
that some people might have to deal with. And uh, it was interesting the way that I think it's the message broke out Lamentations into three sections, and the first is that God locked me in deep darkness, and so the first 18 verses I think are just lashing out, and I was stripped, I was beaten, I was da da da, and then the second from I think 19 to 27 is there is hope in God, and it is good to hope in God, and it's good to believe that God will make everything anew. And then the last third of it is the recognition that God speaks both good things and bad things into being.
Mhm.
That whether it's lifting His hand of protection or coming in with protection, and like it was an interesting discussion for us to remember that again, going back to like that holding intention that these things are all part of what God is doing in our life, and to be able to recognize that both of those things are of God, um, is also another form of gratitude to say that I know, like, I'm grateful for knowing it will be okay, and how hard it is for people when they are in the darkness to remember the hope. And so that was just making me again reflect back on the need to validate that there are, when there are tough things, and how to handle them with then being able to come back out and say, but I'm grateful and I'm
Mhm.
hopeful that things will be different. And I think that's been challenging. I mean, it's been heartbreaking to see people in this situation where there are things that are happening to folks that really, we just lost a friend last week, 53 years old, died of complications of a concussion. Nothing to do with coronavirus at all.
Mhm.
And just a really sad thing. And I think sometimes in this particular time, it's almost like people maybe don't even feel entitled to the things that they want to feel strongly about that have nothing to do. Like you almost feel like everything has to be wrapped up in this big, crisis moment. And we might not be giving ourselves the grace to say, no, it's okay if I just independently like deal with this thing that's happening in life that has nothing to do with with the pandemic. I can actually just grieve for this very thing that is in this ball, or I can be really grateful for this thing that's in, it's a strange time to feel like everything's sort of wrapped up into a bigger conversation.
Yeah. So there, you've got life that still is going to happen
Right.
with the complication that
Right.
it kind of lays a layer over top. But you're right. I mean, good things and bad things are happening. People are
Right.
having babies and loving
Right.
that opportunity. People
Yeah.
are dying from other things and sick from other things, and all of that's still going to happen. Life still is going to happen, and the question is how we kind of look for where are the places we can still latch on to
Right.
what we do have, what we are fortunate to be, wherever that is, whatever that is. And I
Mhm.
would just contend that the period of time when the Bible was written, it was a whole lot more difficult
Yeah,
than now.
no doubt.
Yeah.
And there could be more difficult times than this. I think it's hard for us to imagine. We always think our moment is unique. Not so much historically.
Mm.
So, Lee, before we wrap up here, if people want to get to your stuff, I know that Aaron has enjoyed your Present Perfect material, as
Mhm.
have I. But where can they find you to get more?
Yeah, so easy place is my blog. I have a podcast, the Thriveology podcast, and actually there's a page there that I just put up that has all of my Thanksgiving. I've done several Thanksgiving podcast episodes and some gratitude episodes, and it's thriveology.com/Thanksgiving, just to make it simple. So thriveology.com/Thanksgiving.
Okay. Well, one thing, Lee, that's amazing is whenever I talk with you, and I think people think we probably talk about this stuff all the time. We do speak every Sunday, but it's usually about random stuff we're doing and what our parents are going through and what we're going through. But it is amazing to me how we land at similar spots, and I'm grateful for our upbringing and family.
Mhm.
That we really are. We were privileged to be. Our parents are watching, I know, so they'll be grateful. But sometimes we have funny stuff to say about our family background, how we could never be sick and things like that. But for the most part, we were given a gift, and the gift was to be able to see these things inside of ourselves
Yeah.
and to identify them. And I'm grateful you're my brother. You're,
Well, I'm
you're a
grateful you're
great
mine.
brother. And
Yeah.
Tim is too. I hope he's watching. And I wish I could see you this Thanksgiving or Christmas or ever.
Well, it won't be ever.
I hope we're
Let's
we're
hope.
gonna get a. Well, I mean,
We don't know that.
No, I think we.
One
I think,
form or another.
I think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I don't think it's a train.
I
but,
hope not.
Yeah, I think summertime maybe.
Yeah.
Aaron, what do you think?
I don't know. I'm the jerk that's going to spend Thanksgiving with a bunch of people. So I don't really care.
Just be careful because I love you. Don't want something to
The
happen.
light's
to
right
you, but-
there. I'm driving through the tunnel. I'm right there. I'm saying hi to everybody.
If you hear a horn,
for
you rethink this.
Yeah, exactly. Retreat. All right, Lee, thank you so much for being with
Thanks.
us.
Thanks
And
for having
Aaron,
me.
as always, love you guys.
Yeah.
And we love all of you, Columbia. Happy Thanksgiving. We won't see you next week. We're off next week. We'll see you the next week. And I've got a friend of mine coming on to talk about, actually, a couple of friends to talk about leadership development. And then Aaron's got some amazing stuff planned for us for December. Right, Aaron?
I'm sure. Yes.
I'm sure.
Thank you.
So anyway, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.